There we go.
Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the fourth talk in our series of discussions with expert speakers today. My name's Ewan, and I'm very happy to be joined by Dr. Wilfred Pinfold, who's going to be talking to us about tourism, travel, hospitality, and the Smart City Programme. He is the Chief Executive Officer of Urban Systems Inc., a company that builds vibrant communities using technology to facilitate civic engagement, deliver services, and share resources. Pinfold is also a research professor in computer science at Portland State University and has more than 30 years of experience in computational and data science. So it's a pleasure to have you here. And I'd like to now just hand the floor over to you.
Well, thanks, you, and I really appreciate it. Nice introduction. So a little bit of background for me. I spent a long career at Intel. I'm actually out in Portland, Oregon. The weather just changed. I'm a little stuffy because of allergies, but so I apologize if I sound a little bit nasal. But a long career out at Intel, working mainly in high performance computing, and then 5 years ago left to start Urban Systems. There are five founders, and we have spent a lot of time engaged with standard-setting bodies. We have a long-standing relationship with the National Institute of Standards and Technology, which is part of the Department of Commerce, looking at how do you do exactly what you had just said, build vibrant communities using technology to enable civic engagement, deliver services, and share resources. And so I just sat through that session with Kip and Lee. It was really an excellent session and sort of set up a lot of what I wanted to talk about. But maybe to start, I'll just say, take what I'm about to talk about in the concept that he talked about, sort of that agile approach, get something out there and then work on it. So I'm going to talk a little bit about transportation, tourism, and hospitality, which I know very little about. And I'm going to use an example that's Elyria based, where I don't live, so take the example only as a vehicle to talk about a few tough challenges that we have come across as we look at ways of building technology into cities. The other point that Kipper made that I think is really important here is the quote that he used from Maya Angelou, that it's less about what you do and what you say and more about how you make people feel. And a lot about delivering these kind of services is about making sure that people feel comfortable, that you're creating an environment where they can be creative, they can be productive. And so I'll go through this. I'll try and leave some time. I know we've only got 30 minutes here, but I'll try and leave some time for some questions. There are some sort of concepts in here that might be helpful to have a bit of discussion about. And I hope it'll generate some thinking as you go through this process. So let me just start off here. So the example that I thought I would pick on here, given where we are economically, hopefully arising out of the pandemic, that what we've seen is that a lot of small businesses, Mary mentioned the interest in trying to help small businesses get going. A lot of small businesses have been hit very, very hard through the pandemic. For all the reasons we know. And a lot of the businesses that are large and online have actually done quite well. They've been able to pick up a lot of that business. And so as we come out of the pandemic, how do we go about helping those small businesses re-engage and get back up on their feet quickly? And of course, the federal government through the American Rescue Plan is pushing some money out this way. So there may in fact be resources to tap into that we could use through the EDA, the Economic Development Association, to try and get some of these businesses back online. But what would we do? What would the actions be? And in fact, in the context of how the larger organizations, the Amazons and the Googles and the Facebooks, managed to use sort of this infrastructure that they had built to continue to do business? Are there things we can learn from that we can apply in helping these smaller businesses sort of move forward and go into a new era and pick up on some of that? Tourism was interesting. It was partly I was asked to sort of look at tourism a little bit. And as I say, I don't live in Elyria. I don't live in Ohio. I live out here in Portland, Oregon. But in every state, there is a significant part of the economy, and particularly small service businesses that depend heavily on what we classify as tourism. And so I just thought I'd put some numbers down here so as we know what problem we're going after. That statewide visitors spend about $38 billion in Ohio a year, or at least did in 2009, 2019. I mean, and that's obviously we want to get back to that or better than that. And it generates, $48–50 billion worth of business. And a lot of this is the small businesses, the people that we need to and want to help get back on their feet. So this is a pretty interesting place to focus effort as we move forward. Now, I'm not recommending this as a particular project. I know you all have projects, but I wanted to go sort of through the thinking of how I would go about looking at this challenge. And one of the things that I think we've seen through the pandemic is this sort of value of networking and how important that is. And there's a couple of points here that may not be quite so obvious. Why is it that I feel very comfortable using Amazon? I buy a lot of things through Amazon today, and all the things we might say negatively about a large business that has that much control. These businesses have helped us enormously through the pandemic because they provided us online with the kind of infrastructure, the network, to understand trust and to feel that we can discover pretty much any product we want, and we trust that product will be delivered on time when we need it, and that if it's the wrong product or there's something wrong with it, we have recourse. And that's missing in many cases for using small businesses online, that it's very hard to know if the company at the other end of that transaction is who they say they are and is going to deliver on time, and what you would do if they didn't deliver, if you paid them money and they didn't deliver. So there's an opportunity there to sort of create a network or a market of providers, potentially smaller providers. And if we could do that and give the same kind of trust and value in each of those cases, that would be hugely beneficial for those small businesses. And the only way they can really do it is by getting into a network, by working together. And in the tourism example, again, I'm using these as examples, but I hope you'll relate them to your own projects and sort of see how some of these concepts may play to bring value to your own project. By working together, in which case, in many cases, these would be competitors. They'd be people vying for business with one another, hotels and restaurants and others. But by working together, they could create an environment where people felt as safe, that they knew that within this network, if they were doing transactions within this network, that the reputation of the players in the network was important, and that you're only in the network if you have been a good actor and worked well. And now sort of move a little bit more. Well, here's an example. And say I don't know anything about ice fishing either, so this was just an example. But how that network would work in an example like this, that in order for me as a user to say, oh, I want to go to Ohio and go ice fishing in Lake Erie, the amount of work I would have to do and the number of small businesses I would touch, the people who know where to fish and how to fish, the people who can keep me safe if I go out there, give me shelter when I'm out fishing, all the normal things with tourism, like how do I get there and what food do I eat and where do I go to purchase equipment. These are all small businesses or opportunities for small business that could be coordinated through a network, through an infrastructure that you could build using technology in the same way that that Amazon has brought together many providers around a network that makes me feel safe. So just as a sort of example, tourism, if you were to plan a trip like this. Now, if I was doing this in Oregon and we've looked at some of this, I would look at things like the wineries along the Willamette Valley and how they could work together to create visiting trips where somebody could go from maybe to 4 or 5 different wineries, all of whom might compete. But in offering that kind of a tour, you'd make it much more attractive for a tourist to say, oh yeah, I'd be really interested in going and seeing 4 or 5 wineries, getting to see how they work, drink some of their wine, maybe select the wines that I want for the next year. I might think about windsurfing in the Columbia Valley or rock hounding in Eastern Oregon. All of those would drive huge opportunities for small business to provide services, restaurant services, etc., to whoever it is who's traveling. So that's kind of the problem that we saw as an important one to tackle, and how would we go about doing it. So let me talk a little bit about what we mean by trust, and why it is actually quite difficult to establish properly in an internet business, and why it is that large companies like Amazon and Google and Facebook have been able to provide such huge value to us, and could we figure out a way to bring that to smaller businesses? And for those of you who are sort of technology and maybe a little older like me, you will understand that one of the founding efforts behind the internet was really about its distributed nature. It was to try and move us away from a rather brittle switch network that was used for our telephone system. The idea that you could, in the case of a disaster, let's say that the switch network in Chicago went down, that would have, in the old days, have separated the East from the West. Communications would have been very difficult. But with the internet and packet switch networks, everything can be distributed. You can move everything more out towards the edge. And that was really a theme behind, HTML and the hypertext markup language, and how we can enable and facilitate agency in people individually, not in large organizations, but give everybody a position on the internet. And that, because of this trust issue, has been sort of reversed into these large organizations. But it's quite possible to build this sort of distributed network where you give agency to the small businesses and allow them to use the network, the internet, to communicate and work together, and deliver services that could be seen as more sort of cooperative community services. And there's a significant effort to sort of counteract, not to get rid of, but to counteract the centralization of these services and facilitate these sort of smaller businesses interacting together. And I say that because I think it's really important as we come out of COVID to look for ways to expand the use of the internet into helping small and local businesses provide the kinds of service with the kinds of trust that we have learned to expect from the larger organizations. And the way we do this is give people agency, push the data to the edge. And so what I mean by that is, let me give an example, because I think it's important to sort of grasp this. If you had all of your personal information available to you and in your control, and you go into a virtual store, and they have all the information about their product that is in their control, the two of you can complete that transaction, just the two of you. You have the right and the agency to complete that transaction, you and they. The way that we do it today with Amazon is that basically Amazon carries all that information. They have your personal information, they have all the information about the distributor or the provider, and they will complete the transaction, and that's how you can trust it. So how do we build that trust in and let that agency happen? And there are a number of techniques that are being developed on the internet. This is not new. I say we work very closely with the Department of Commerce and look around, how do you build those kinds of transaction networks and those kinds of markets that will provide that security and that trust in those kinds of transactions. I know later on today you've got Irene Eng coming in from DataSwift, and she will talk a lot more about this. This is something they've been looking at extensively. They've done a lot of research on, and they're building those kinds of transactional networks. And these are pretty critical to sort of taking the next step. So once you have that foundation, once you can build that kind of transactional foundation, where do you go? So, here's a network that we've actually proposed as part of the EDA program that would allow you to look at a network of providers in the transportation and hospitality community. So we're talking hotels and restaurants, small providers, people who might know how to do rock hounding or provide fly fishing services or rent windsurfers. Small businesses that can work together through a network, and through that network they provide some level of security. In order to stay in the network, they have to be good actors, and the other people in the network will not want them in the network unless they are good actors. And so it helps now me as a traveler. I want to go rock hounding in Southeast Oregon. Now I can go to that network and say, okay, so what are the list of trusted Airbnbs? What are the list of trusted restaurants that I can go to? Who could I talk to about where the best rock hounding is? So it's not just promoting their rock hounding, but looking at what all the opportunities are in that area. And if we can build that network, we can provide it online to people who are interested in getting out finally after all of the lockdown and seeing these areas and getting out into these areas. That it's easy, that they don't have to really work at it that hard. They can make a decision, they can plan a trip, and they can go to all these small businesses and use all these systems. It doesn't take a big travel agency to plan it all for them. They can be much more independent. And this is the kind of network where you could start to provide pages where people can put information in and what service they're providing, that I as a tourist could find that information and could link it in with a planning system, that when I get out there that I can interact with displays and my tablet, my phone, to learn and make sure I'm going to the right place and I'm registering. So you could build this kind of service, and I won't go into a great deal of detail, but please feel free to ask questions on this. And then finally, something else we've been looking at that really helps across these networks is, how do you reward good behavior, both on the side of the providers and on the side of the users, the tourists in this network? How do I encourage people to behave in a way that is beneficial to the rock hounding community, not just chip off pieces of rock because I think they're cool and take them home, but treat the environment the way that it should be. And there are ways to monitor this. I'll give an example. By the way, in the real world, we incentivize all the time in really interesting ways that change behavior. The question is, how do we do it online? And I'll give a very simple example we're all familiar with. When we go to a sale, I'm going to the Apple store, I drive downtown, I park my car in a parking garage down there, and I go into Apple. At the end of my transaction, I hand them my parking ticket and they validate it. So Apple is saying, I want you to drive downtown to come to my store, and in order to make sure that that's easy for you, I'm going to validate your parking for you. That's incentivizing people to use a car. And one might well say, well, how are you incentivizing people to use public transit? That's a little bit harder. And you might well want to start to say, okay, how do I influence that kind of behavior? How do I do the equivalent of validating a parking pass in some of these businesses? How do I encourage people to go to small businesses, use small businesses? How do I encourage them to have the right behavior when they're in there to do business in a good way? And this sort of idea of a digital loyalty card is important. And you can build this into the networks. So sort of think about that as you're looking at your challenges here. How do you create these networks? How do you pull people in? How do you make sure they feel trusted and are trustworthy within that? And how do you incentivize good behavior? So that sort of frames where we are and what we're thinking about in how do we tackle a problem like getting tourism back up on its feet. The last slide here, and I'll just sort of leave it here. Sort of what is it we want to do? Well, we want to be the main source of information for tourists, providers, and municipalities. And sort of create that information point that makes it easy. Takes all the friction out of these transactions for these small businesses, makes it easy for them put their wares online, for people to find them, and for trusted transactions to happen between them. So that was all I really want to talk about today. Hopefully I've left 5-10 minutes for questions. I know Mayor Frank is up next, and I'm looking forward to hearing him too. So we'll try and wrap up on time. But does somebody want to start off by asking any questions? Are there any questions that you'd like to raise?
I think I just wanted to first of all just thank you for an excellent presentation. It was incredibly interesting. I think so obviously relevant to this weekend. I've had a couple of questions sent in to me personally, and so I'm happy to sort of address them over to you. So the first one was sort of in the context of this network. You can see how advantageous it could be for small businesses, but the question is, where do you regard the cutoff point being between a small business and a business that might be too large for this space? Do you regard there as being a cutoff for this?
I don't. It's a really good question. I don't. I think the way I would look at it is that that the smaller businesses are struggling, and we want to create an environment that encourages them in. The larger businesses don't suffer the same way, and many of those large businesses benefit from what we would call a walled garden, right? That if I'm of a scale that's large enough that I can provide you with the trust and the services that you desire, then it actually benefits me to build a wall around myself so as you don't go to my competitor. And I would argue that all of those larger tech companies have done that. If I'm a user of Facebook, all my information, including all my posts and photographs, etc., are all in Facebook. Now, they could provide you an easy mechanism to take that data out, but they don't. And they don't for a very good reason. They don't want you to take all your information and go to another service. So it's actually quite difficult. There are barriers there. And this is not new, right? We've been doing this for years, that once you're very protective, you build a network of your own customers, and you try to make sure that your competitors can't come and poach your customers. So it's not unrealistic to do that. It's not wrong, and I'm certainly not trying to say that. What I am trying to say is that it's not healthy in some situations to do that. And actually, one of the most notable situations, let me give an example, because one of the things that I do, I'm in Portland. I'm the mayor's representative on what's called the Technology Oversight Committee, which sort of looks at a lot of the technologies that we're deploying in the city and tries to make sure that there's citizen input as we go forward. And one of the things I found working with the city is that their mindset is very different from these large organizations. They're a large organization themselves. It's a huge enterprise, a lot of employees, a lot of money going through, a lot of tax revenue and other things going through. So it's not a small organization, but they think the same way as a lot of small organizations. They don't want to own public data. They care more about trust. And a lot of them, I've had a good long conversation with. We have a smart cities group within the city, and the way they look at data is they want to know that they can tailor a service to a particular citizen. And in order to do that, in effect, they would need to know a lot of information about that citizen, right? But they don't want to keep all that data in a database because it's a liability. If somebody were to access it, the city would lose its reputation. There are mechanisms by which public information requests can force them to release that information. In many cases, they don't want to be the channel for that. We don't want them to be the channel for that. And then there are federal laws that require them to provide information through things like a FISA warrant, where we as citizens wouldn't necessarily know that they'd given that information, and if that was then discovered, we would feel very upset about having been a channel to our private information. So they see that they want to establish these sort of they don't want to be an owner. They don't want to hoard that information the same way as a large company would, because they're not trying to protect their business from competitors. And that way of thinking is much more around, well, I should help you as a citizen collect information that will help me enable you, but I don't want to keep that information. I just want you to have it in a digital form. So it's when you come in and want to put your kid into school, you don't have to fill out a lot of forms about, where you live and what your economic situation is. You could just say, here's just for the decision that you're about to make, here's my information, or give me your options and I will check with my own information digitally what service is most appropriate. So there, I would say there's not too big. I would say that currently the problem is that the way that we do it today, with all this stuff centralized, penalizes businesses that do not want to hoard data. And we want to encourage and create an environment where there's more agency for individuals and there's more distribution of information, and we can take it with us between services.
Thanks. I think that definitely will answer the question. I've got Bobby Taylor here, and he's got a few questions for you as well. So I'm going to hand over to Bobby if you're able to unmute yourself.
Yes, thank you. So I put my questions in the chat so that he could answer based on the time that you have. But basically the questions I had was about the loyalty card. Is that a physical card? Would that be an app or a digital wallet? That was my first question. And then with incentives, were you thinking about using a token system that could be used for goods and services throughout the city? And then lastly, not to monopolize all the questions, there was a blockchain and smart contracts in your illustration. Is that going to be a closed or local blockchain network just for the city? Those are my questions. Thank you.
Yeah. So those are all really good questions, in the sake of brevity, I'll give the summary, but then I'll talk a little bit about it. The summary is that it depends. It depends on what you're trying to do and where you're trying to do it. And I give some examples that we've tackled. So first of all, in the case of whether it's a physical card or just a digital card, it could take either form. So what you're trying to do is to capture information that can be shared in a transaction that is valid and validatable, right? In other words, it's important that if somebody checks your loyalty card, that they know that the points that you have are actually the points that you have, not something you made up.
Just to say, we have about 1 minute left.
I think the summary here is that, and these are good questions, and I will answer them in the chat later on because they are definitely worth answering. Think about it in the context of the problem that you're trying to solve, because you have that flexibility. That is a variable that I will say on the digital card. We have specifically looked at physical cards because many of the services the cities provide are provided to minority communities that may not have access to digital tools. And so it's very important that they be able to have a physical identifier that may trigger digital information in the background, but they don't have to have a smartphone or other. Anyhow, I will stop there. Really interesting, and I'm looking forward to hearing Mayor Frank as well. So thank you very much.
In fact, I think we might be able to go on for an extra couple of minutes if you'd like to. If there is any other questions, or if you'd like to answer a bit more of Bobby's questions, just check that.
Well, let's see. I can answer Bobby's online, or I could tackle them here. So if anybody else either wants to drop something on the chat that I could try and answer later, or I'll just go back to Bobby's questions because they were great ones. I'll give while people are thinking, I'll give another example. One of the more interesting loyalty cards that's out there was actually something called Digital. It was developed by the city of Tel Aviv, who were providing services, and the city was feeling that they provided great services. Everybody loved the services they got, but they didn't. The city felt that they weren't being given due recognition for providing those services. The city provides services, the services are really good, and people didn't feel that the city was doing a good job, but they loved all the services. So they wanted to link those up, and they created a loyalty card so as they could do that. In other words, a citizen card that you would have. And through that, you would give them a certain amount of information that was kept private. But it would let them know who you were, that you lived there, that you were a permanent resident, et cetera, et cetera. And through that, you would get special services. You would when the schools opened up for registration, if you had one of those cards, you get informed a day early, and you'd be able to go in to register your kids for school a day early, which was a significant benefit. What they found out quite rapidly was that they could learn from who it was who was signing up for these various services and actually improve the service through that system. And so, for example, they would find that a particular area of town, there were a lot of people who needed daycare, but they put all the daycare places in other parts of town. And they said, well, this is silly. If all these people are taking their kids to daycare 5 miles away from where they live, why don't we just move the daycare closer to where all the people are going? And they would not have known that had there not been a loyalty card in place to sort of make that connection. That kind of creating the right behaviors, understanding what's going on, but in that process, you're sharing a lot of personal information. So it's very important that information remain in the control and the ownership of the individual who's joining, that they don't feel that the city is now taking control of their lives, has this big database on them, and makes all these decisions for them. They get to choose, am I going to share this information or not? And if I share it, am I getting value back for it? Are they moving the daycare closer to me? So those are good things to think about in the context of the Maya Angelou quote, right? Once again, it's less about what you say and what you do. It's more about how you make people feel. Make them feel at home in the city they're in. Make that feeling, and make them feel they have the agency to make their own decisions. You're not taking them away. Hopefully that's good, Ewan. Is there more time? Do you want me to keep going? Because I can go for a long time.
Well, I'm happy to go for as long as you would like to, or any other questions. I've actually got one final question that might be interesting, which is within tourism, opposed to I don't know, from what I gather, they're saying sort of opposed to sort of local residents using this network. Does that pose, would you have the network like a separate network for every town, or would it be one overarching one? Because would you have to share your personal data with multiple different local networks, or one large one that silos different towns into different areas? Brilliant question.
This is why we work so closely with some of the standards bodies I mentioned at the beginning, like National Institute of Standards and Technology. Being a techie, I tend to use techie terms. So there's a term known as Metcalfes Law. Metcalfes Law is about networks and how the value of the network increases as the network gets larger. It is why you have everybody talks about Internet Protocol, IP, and it's ubiquitous. It's everywhere. It doesn't matter where you go. It's Internet Protocol. People don't think that there were alternatives. At the beginning of the network, there were many protocols out there, and they were vying for viability. But Metcalfes Law demands that there will be only one. And the reason is because if you think about it, you get exponential growth in value as the network gets larger. So if you've got a mail network with one person in it, it has no value, right? Zero value. But if you have a network, if you have a mail network that has your family in it, now it has real value, but it's only limited. If I have a mail network that gets to my whole company, now it has huge value. If I have a mail network that gets to everybody on the planet, that is extraordinarily valuable, right? That the value goes up exponentially with the growth of that network. And if I'm joining a network, I want to join the largest network. I will join the largest network because it has real value. In this case, where we're talking about a transaction platform, that is true. And so I believe that we will find that there's one set of standards and protocols that will actually be adopted very broadly across the world. And that's why we work closely with the standards bodies, because we want to make sure that when you have a data wallet, you live in Portland, you have the data wallet, it allows you to transact with the local transportation community, get your city services, etc. And you get on a plane, you fly to Austin. You don't want to have to reinvent all that, right? It's important that when you go into a transaction, you can say, here's my data wallet, and it works. We do this in the real world, right? I mean, even though there may be different things, if I walk into pretty much anywhere in the world with my passport will pass, right? People know what it is. It has a certain format. It has a a regularity to it. In the physical world, we have documents and things that are recognized globally. They may not all be exactly the same, but they are recognizable in a way that allows them to have function globally. It's really important that these services be standardized to the point at which, the Austin Portland is one way to think about it, but actually, when you think about it in a much smaller context, we live in a metro area that has 34 municipalities, so 34 separate governments that govern different parts of it. And our transit system cuts across all 34 of those municipalities. If whatever service I was getting from one municipality didn't work with the one next door, it would be useless. And so it's really important that we start to think about it in that context. And I will say, this is a huge, challenging problem at a global scale to solve. But the forces are behind us in moving in this direction. And so the way I would think about it as you think about your application is, first of all, don't let that get in your way as you develop your application. You don't have to go with the one standard. There are many out there, and you have to go with one right now because you need to get going. But keep in mind that you want that interoperability. So look for the larger networks, look for the more established standards and APIs, and help us move to a world where the service that you are developing for your small business in Elyria is portable. That it may not work in Portland today, but don't think about it as, oh, well, I'm going to do all this very specialized stuff and try and lock it down. Think, well, someday or another, if this is a good service, they're going to want to use it in other places. So how do I build it in a way that is expandable? It's a great question, and that's something we spend a lot of time on, is sort of trying to move those big rocks. But don't think about that as you're building. Don't let it get in the way of you building your own solution. But keep in mind that you're in a community of users that where you want that interoperability, you want that portability, and as much as the tools that are out there let you do that, take advantage of it.
That's great, and it really inspires you for what the post-COVID world could be like as a traveller. Connecting Portland, Elyria, and dare I say it, even across the Atlantic to Glasgow as well. So I think that's hopefully sparked off lots of different ideas for our participants this weekend. And on behalf of everyone here, thank you very much. And I'm sure there'll be, if anyone else has any other questions or anything they would like to ask Dr. Pinfold, then
just want to say hi, Wilfred.
Hi, Reed. Good to see you.
Good to see you. Thank you so much for speaking today. I just want to say I really appreciate all your feedback and thoughts. I don't have any questions. As you know, we chat regularly, so I don't think I have any questions.
Well, I told everybody to listen carefully to your presentation, because you were going to tell them how to build a market network, and that was critical to everything I was talking about. So not to put too much pressure on you, but I'm excited to hear your talk too. So look forward to it.
Just wanted to say thanks for that.
Cool. Thanks, Ewan. Pleasure to be here, and I'll hang around to hear Mayor Frank. I'm looking forward to it.
That's great, and we've also got Irene speaking later for everyone else who's listening. So we're looking forward to that talk as well. But thank you so much, and it was a pleasure to chat.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day. Have a great weekend.